The bridge of the UNS Vanguard hummed with the low thrum of fusion drives, a rhythm Admiral Orion Venn had long equated with his own heartbeat after 3 decades adrift in the void. He stood at the viewport, hands clasped behind his back, his uniform sharp despite the recycled air's subtle staleness. At 58, Orion's build remained lean and resolute, etched by a scar along his jaw from a pirate clash in the outer rims, a stark token that command demanded survival as keenly as cunning. His keen gray eyes swept the starfield ahead, where the neutral zone between human colonies and the Krell Dominion danced with elusive sensor phantoms. "Admiral," Lieutenant Alara Kane called from her station, her tone even but threaded with the wariness that shaped her. Alara served as Orion's tactical officer, sharp at 29, her mind a taut spring forever assessing perils before any plunge. She flicked through holographic readouts, her dark hair pulled into a regulation knot. Scouts confirm the anomaly. It's unnatural. Energy patterns align with Krell warp tech, but they're warped. Possible trap or breakdown. Orion nodded without turning. 4 months, the Krell had tested limits, their crystalline vessels probing human territory like probing fingers on an open sore. This anomaly, a rift in spacetime, unfurling like a bruise over the sector, imperiled supply routes to 7 vital systems. Sever those and colonies would hunger. Worse, it beckoned full invasion. He bore the burden not as cold figures but vivid faces. Miners on Epsilon 4, families on New Terra. "Options, Lieutenant?" Alara paused, her fingers hovering over the console. From the engineering alcove, Ensign Theo Reyes leaned in, the lanky engineer with his ever-present cheek smudge of grease and a grin veiling his swift intellect. Theo was the rogue element, 25 and audacious, the sort to improvise fixes from junk. "We could microjump through, sir. Skim the fringe launch probes. But if it's volatile..." He shrugged, eyes alight with the challenge's spark. "Risky," Alara shot back, glaring at Theo. "Vanguard's shields sit at 80% post-ion storm. One errant surge and we're wreckage." Orion pondered in the lengthening quiet. He relied on Alara's restraint. It had thwarted ambushes before, but Theo's resourcefulness had wrought wonders from dying drives. The rift swelled on the main holoscreen, a churning vortex of violet and shadow energy lashes whipping like pulsing veins. It had materialized overnight, choking outpost comms. No Krell war cry, merely this mute stranglehold. "Helm, lay in the microjump," Orion commanded, his voice steady and final. "Alara, sync with Theo on shield tweaks. We probe, chart it, relay to fleet command. No stunts." He pivoted then, locking eyes with them. Alara's jaw clenched, but she assented. Theo offered a quick thumbs up, plunging into schematics. The ship trembled as drives revved, stars blurring into streaks. Orion clutched the command rail, the deck pulsing beneath his boots. The jump executed cleanly, until the rift's rim brushed them. Alarms wailed, crimson lights flooding the bridge. "Shields at 60. Theo bellowed, hands blurring over panels, shunting power from life support in a gambit that would soon leave the crew sweltering. Yet as the Vanguard slipped free, sensors erupted. Not void. A Krell cruiser half-phased into existence, its crystalline frame cracked and spewing plasma. Driftbound, yet pulsing a distress signal in mangled human code. Venn. Trap. Burn the name. Orion's scar prickled. The signal died, static crackling like mocking mirth. Whatever the Krell had unleashed had rebounded, dooming their own vessel in the rift's jaws. But the anomaly expanded, its tendrils groping toward the Vanguard like ravenous roots. "Alara, hail them," he directed, pulse surging. This transcended mere peril. It was a ploy, and they stood targeted. The toll already climbed. Time, energy, and the initial fraying of a broader systemic collapse. Orion gripped the armrests of his command chair, the bridge's hum resonating through his bones like an approaching tempest. The view screen flickered with sensor feeds, rendering the void in vivid blues and reds, Nebula 7's gas clouds coiling like animated haze. His crew operated with honed precision. Lieutenant Kira Voss at tactical, her fingers gliding over holographic interfaces. Engineer Tomas Hale bent over diagnostics, sweat tracing his brow amid the air's chill. And Captain Alara Thorne, his first officer, rigid at his side, gaze fixed on the looming anomaly. "Admiral," Voss said, her voice firm yet cautious, readings spiking once more. That thing's drawing mass beyond any black hole's norm here. Orion nodded, eyes unmoving from the screen. The anomaly defied nature. A space-time fissure sparked by some ancient Xeno relic the Alliance had prodded too aggressively. His fleet, Vanguard Group, had been sent to staunch it before it devoured trade corridors entirely. But containment required proximity, perilous closeness, and Earth simulations had understated the disruptions. Helm adjusted 271 Mark IV. Hold at the event horizon's brink. His command sliced clean, unyielding. Thorn glanced his way, her prudence clashing with the imperative to advance. She'd contested this path in briefing. Safer to strike remotely, but Orion favored resolve over reliance on tech. Humans had conquered stars through sheer tenacity. The ship quaked in the turn, dampeners straining with a whine. Hale muttered oaths, mending a faltering relay. Sir, the artifact's pulsing. It's jamming shields, down to 62%. Orion leaned in, his uniform's leather protesting softly. He sensed the 7 trailing systems' gravity, colonies reliant on these routes for sustenance, fuel, survival. Forfeit this, and outposts from Vega Prime to the Rim would wither. Options, people. We can't evade indefinitely. Voss summoned a projection, the anomaly flowering like a serrated bloom of twisted radiance. Gravitic anchors could pin it, flood with plasma. But the pulse, it'll scorch our systems on entry. Thorn folded her arms, measured. Or withdraw, summon Soul Command's heavy cruisers. Let them ignite the blaze. Payne's jaw firmed. Withdrawal spelled delay, surrender to the anomaly's advance. He'd staked his career on braver wagers. The Scarlac incursion, where he'd forged victory from defeat with improvised torpedoes and unyielding crew. No. We're committed. Hale, bolster shields via auxiliaries. The engineer swabbed his brow, diverting flows. Possible. Corwell groaned but timed well. Klaxons erupted, red strobes sweeping the bridge. The view screen distorted as the pulse struck, an unseen force battering the hull. Consoles fizzed. Voss cursed, her display stuttering mid-scan. Shields at 40%. Drifting, it's tractoring us. Orion surged up, chair scraping. Evasive. Thrusters full. The ship protested, engines blazing against the drag, stars smearing as the anomaly gaped wider. Thorn seized a bulkhead, face ashen amid wailing secondaries, forward bays stressing. Admiral, attitude control slipping, the helmsman reported, voice strained. In that instant Orion perceived it. The pulse pulsed rhythmic, heartbeat-like, luring them to nourish. His thoughts whirled, assembling Xenotech intel shards. The artifact reshaped, not raised, creasing space like foil. Subtle mastery, not raw might. Hale, channel all to forward emitters. Voss, attuned to the pulse, resonate, don't resist. Thorn's eyes flared. Sir, that's fatal. We'll magnify the draw, trust me. Orion's words rang like steel, hand firm on the comm. The crew faltered a moment, then sprang, Voss recalibrating, Hale overriding. The ship bucked, thrusters countering the anomaly's beat in a lethal waltz, mere margins from doom. For an instant equilibrium held. The view screen steadied, the rift's gullet easing as emitters thrummed in harmony. But fresh alerts blazed, auxiliary rifts birthing, warped space whips cracking. One snagged the port nacelle, ripping sensors in plasma flare. Damage. Orion snapped, focus honed by adrenaline. Hale's intercom crackled. Nacelle venting, breach. And sir, it's evolving. Pulse shifting. Orion eased into his chair, triumph curdling. They'd gained a reprieve, but at steep price. A hobbled vessel, frayed crew, anomaly outpacing their forecasts. Eyes across the bridge sought him, awaiting the next decree. He refused to yield, not with 7 systems teetering, his resolve the sole audacity in play. Orion Venn gripped the armrests of his command chair, the leather creaking under his knuckles as the bridge shuddered. Alarms blared in staccato bursts, red lights painting his crew's faces in flickering crimson. The view screen revealed the debris field ahead, a necropolis of mangled metal from the Kalon blockade, hull fragments tumbling like spectral remains in the black. Helm, steady as she goes, he commanded, his voice slicing the clamor like a blade. Ensign Lara Torres, her dark hair slick with sweat, nodded without glancing back, fingers weaving over controls. The Reliant was no behemoth, she was a frigate, lithe and agile, forged for probes like this. Yet the Kalins had rendered the outer rim a slaughterhouse, their drones overwhelming any stir. Venn's orders rang straightforward. Infiltrate, hand the encrypted data core to Epsilon IV's resistance. Extract before Imperial eyes caught wind. Straightforward, not simple. His first officer, Commander Elias Kane, hunched over tactical, scarred-visaged Dower. Sir, sensors tag 3 hostiles at 200 clicks. Weapons hot. Venn's jaw locked. Kane embodied caution, forever tallying risks, but now it dragged like ballast. Evasive Delta. Launch countermeasures. The ship jolted as torpedoes spat forth, unfurling chaff clouds to baffle drone locks. One foe veered wild, cratering into debris with a muted burst. The pair closed relentlessly, energy beams raking the Reliance shields. In engineering below, Lieutenant Miravos swabbed grease from her brow, snapping directives to her squad. Engines labored, heat spiking crimson. Reroute auxiliary to deflectors, she roared, her lean form flitting between stations. Voss was the unyielding core, fearless to excess, ready to seal breaches with raw hands. A novice tech faltered, gaze wide. But Lieutenant, warp coils will burn. Her stare could forge steel. Burned coils beat burned lives. Now. On the bridge, deck plates warped under fresh impact. Venn unbuckled, rising to brace against the console. Damage. Kane reeled it. Shields 40%, Section 3 breach minor, data core vault secure. That core held weapon blueprints to flip the war against Kalon hordes. Forfeit it, 7 systems endured the yoke. The lead drone struck again, beams skimming the flank. Sparks flew from a panel. A crewman yelped, arms scorched. Venn reached him, slapping a med patch from the kit. Hold, Ramirez. We've got this. The man dipped his head, agony carving lines, eyes steeling. Such bonds, visceral, wordless, fueled them when odds soured. Captain, Torres urged, voice taut. Debris gap at 247. Push engines. Venn eyed Kane's subtle shake. Safe bet. Retreat, await dark cycle veil. But delay invited Kalon buildup, and Epsilon IV's fighters couldn't endure another day sans that core. Push, Venn ruled. Full burn. The Reliant lunged, engines bellowing through the frame. Voss's diversion endured. They pierced the cleft, debris hissing past like avenging shades. One drone tailed too near, detonating on a wreck. The survivor fled, circuits fried. Quiet descended, pierced by cooling hums. Venn settled into his seat, breath easing. Solid work. Course for rendezvous. Yet as stars rotated on screen, Kane neared, murmur low. Too near, sir. If we'd lost her. Venn held his stare, tracing the etched concern. We didn't. We won't. Not for a war worth the blood. The vow lingered amid drifting haze. Still Venn knew the levy rose. The Reliant hobbled, wounds chronicling the attrition. Faint Epsilon 4 signals murmured grim tides. Kalon boots planetside, non-combatants in the fray. The core smoldered in its vault like oath, but conveyance courted fiercer foes. It demanded blaze or burnout. The dim rumble of auxiliary generators echoed in the tight command pod, thunder in Orion's frame. He hunched over the sputtering console, gloved fingers mapping the erratic grid lines weaving the display. The Venn's pride had weathered the asteroid clash, shields at 23%, hull at tenuous 71%, but the comms array gnawed deepest. Mute. Severed from fleet. Admiral, Ensign Liravos said, voice level despite forehead beads. The prudent sort she verified twice before utterance, dark eyes dissecting diagnostics with clockwork rigor. Partial rear ghosts on sensors. Debris or Krell scouts circling. Engine push risks cascade. Orion nodded, gaze downcast. Lyra's vigilance had rescued them twice in this snarl, once flagging a drive core hairline before rupture. Yet vigilance alone wouldn't bridge to rally. He rose, tattered uniform tugging shoulders. Risk accepted, Ensign. Microjump to 7 Alpha. Keep it lean, 0.2 light seconds max. We rendezvous with Indomitable or float. In the pod, Lieutenant Kai Rin huffed, rag-smeared hands on a fizzing relay. The spare engineer brimmed with tenacity and barbs, nimble digit sealing. Microjump on vapors? Optimist, sir. Last half-coil try felt like gravel in the gears. But if we pop grand, it'll starlight the archives. Optimism breathes life, Kai, Orion countered, a rare smile etching his severity. He shouldered the man, sensing coiled strain. Kai's jests cloaked the dread all shared. The Krau raiders' onslaught, plasma lances slicing convoy like butter. Dozens of human hulls gone, crews erased in vacuum. Pride limped among survivors, bearing data cores to pivot the war if delivered. Lyra's hands blurred at station, brow creased. Jump set. Engaging 3-2. The ship quivered, engines groaning alive, deep throb loosening panels scattering tools. Orion seized the strut overhead, view screen streaking star trails. A moment success teased, then klaxons howled, red inundating. Coil overload. Kai dove for override. Sparks bloomed from feeds, ship wrenching, dampeners buckled. Orion slammed the console, ribs stabbing as he braced. The jump hiccuped, ejecting them 0.1 light seconds astray, into debris choked by the destroyer wreck ahead. Status. Orion demanded, writing amid temple blood warm and tart. Lyra's tone strained. Krell signatures inbound. 2 interceptors, 500 clicks closing. Engines 42%. Plasma venting. Kai swore softly, hands whirlwind on reroutes. 30 seconds, Admiral. Rig auxiliaries to weapons grid. Make this tub a ram if needed. Orion's thoughts accelerated. Data cores. Krell movements logged, colony safeguards encoded, nested secure below. Their loss freed raiders unchecked, worlds aflame, sands alert. Unthinkable. Lyra, emergency burst to Indomitable. Position and cargo. Kai stall, deploy decoys. As Lyra beamed the tight signal, view screen ignited. Azure plasma bolts hunting like sharks. Pride twisted leaden, Kai evading with deft touches. One grazed hull, lopping sensors in fireburst. Decoys out, Kai grinned savagely. Pods launched, aping signature, snaring the salvo. Interceptors swerved, but a follow-up nicked flank, crumpling bulkhead. Breaches keened in lower decks. Orion steadied, copper on tongue. Helm, Delta 9 evasive. No grave here. The ship moaned, snaking debris like a lame beast. Sensors pinged distant. The Indomitable hailing response, her bulk parting stars. Krell interceptors sliced nearer, sleek and pitiless. Lyra eyed him, caution yielding to steel. They're fixated, sir. That burst marked us. Then we earn it, Orion murmured, firm. He keyed internal comms, crew-wide. All hands, Admiral. Inbound, but Indomitable inbound. Fight sharp, stand fast. For the colonies. The pod hushed, but for ship's groans, words dusting heavy. Kai latched final fix, engines pulsing renewed. Without, war flared, plasma and railgun weaving void, pride teetering on abyss. Orion observed, steadfast, stakes honed. Beyond endurance, the tenuous promise in their belly. The bridge of the UNS Vanguard hummed with the low thrum of overtaxed engines, vibrations leaching into deck plates like chronic pain. Admiral Orion Venn stood at the central holotable, fingers ghosting the shimmering asteroid belt projection of Kalar system. Red pulses throbbed, 3 enemy corvettes vectoring from debris ion traces predatory. His crew of 30, bonded tight, surged with urgent rhythm. Ensign Lila Torres at NAV, hands surgeon precise on controls. Chief Engineer Marcus Hale snapping to engine bay. Lieutenant Kira Voss at tactical, eyes slitted on threats. Flanking us, Admiral, Voss stated, voice resolute yet gritty from ambush scars. She advanced enemy paths. Full thrust burns reserves before belt escape. Venn nodded, jaw firm. He'd threaded Kalar to dodge Zared main force, wagering asteroids to cloak their heat. Corvettes ghosted through alien sensors trailing thermal. Stakes etched raw. Vanguard bore the prototype warp coil, humanity's launchpad against Zared Dominion. Lose it, 7 systems scorched under Dominion air aid arrived. Options. Venn queried, terse hollow fixed. Torres looked up. Debris veil, slingshot Gamma 9. Dense enough to blind them briefly. Hale scoffed from calms, brow sweat. Collision gamble. Shield 60 post skirmish. 1 bump, scrap. The Admiral balanced, commands press akin to felt G's. He'd forged this team on faith. Torres's daring salvaged Vega, Hale's patches endured storms. Voss, pragmatic anchor, yanked them from Inferno's countless. No oratory, choices birthed deeds. Slingshot, Venn decreed. Hail, front deflectors up. Voss, decoy drone, feign port break. The ship heaved as Torres ignited thrusters, Vanguard nosing the behemoth rock. Ice and stone swirled viewport void, a mute ruins dance. Alarms shrieked at first plasma volley, corvette searing hull close rattling walls. 10 to impact. Voss cried loosing drone. It jetted aft, signature twin, baiting shots as Vanguard plunged shadow. Hail intercomed. Deflectors straining. 30 for power shift. The asteroid bulked eon-scarred monolith, craters mosaicing star-fractured gleams. Torres wove peril, ship creaking in gravity's vice. Venn clutched console, tug in marrow. Then locktone pierced, corvette sensors breaching jam. On us. Voss yelled. Venn's synapses fired. Warp coil blueprints recalled, volatile yet ripe for human twist. Torres invert slingshot, asteroid spin to flip us rear. Eyes wide she acted. Madness ballet physics brink. Vanguard lashed Gamma 9, engines shrieking rotational match. Debris hailed shields chunk lopping array in sparks. Hollow showed corvettes late, ship burst blind spot intimate range. Voss batteries fire. Railgun flares lit black, coring lead hull inventing bloom. It yawed plasma hemorrhaging second dodging. Third disruptor grazed, scorching secondaries, bridge half dousing red. Hail cheered below. Clear, coil safe. Triumph soured. Scans caught damaged foe signaling distress, fleet summon. Chaos sparked Torres's board, arms seared from blown panel. She winced, binding with medstrip, dismissing aid. Venn shouldered her. Strong work. All. Crew breathed, ties tempered in blaze. Yet as Vanguard clawed system rim hollow refreshed, Zared heavies hours distant. Toll echoed, maimed pilot drained shields, truth that legend scribing scarred the trailblazers. Orion gripped the armrests of his command chair, the leather creaking under his knuckles as the bridge lights flickered. Alarms blared in short, insistent bursts, painting the faces of his crew in strobing red. Lieutenant Alara Kane, his tactical officer, leaned over her console, her fingers flying across holographic displays. She was the cautious one, always double-checking trajectories before a single shot fired, but now her eyes burned with focus. Shields at 40%, Admiral, she reported, voice steady despite the deck tilting beneath them. That corvette's plasma lances are punching through faster than we can recharge. Orion nodded, his gaze fixed on the main view screen. The void beyond was a chaos of debris and streaking fire, remnants of the skirmish in the Epsilon Vale. His fleet, the remnants of the United Systems Armada, had pushed deep into Krell territory, chasing whispers of a hidden shipyard. But the ambush had come swift, a swarm of Krell interceptors uncoiling from an asteroid field like vipers. The Vanguard, his flagship, bore the brunt, her hull groaning under the assault. Helm, evasive pattern Delta 7, Orion ordered, his tone clipped. Ensign Tarek Voss, the young navigator with a wit sharp as a laser edge, complied without hesitation. The ship lurched, engines thrumming as it wove through a hail of incoming fire. Voss shot a glance back, his usual smirk absent. They're herding us toward the nebula, sir. If we don't break free, we'll be blind in there. Brian knew it. The Epsilon Nebula loomed on the edge of the display, a swirling maelstrom of ionized gas that scrambled sensors and turned space into a graveyard for the unwary. The Krell were masters of such traps, using the chaos to close in for the kill. But retreat wasn't an option, not with the Intrepid crippled and limping behind them, her engines venting plasma like blood from a wound. Options, Lieutenant? Orion asked Kane, rising to pace the short length of the bridge. His boots magnetized to the deck with each step, a rhythmic thud against the hum of failing systems. Kane straightened, pulling up a tactical overlay. The holograms spun between them, showing the Krell formation tightening like a noose. We could vent the forward bays, create a debris screen to mask our vector change. Buy time to loop back and cover the Intrepid. But it'll expose our ventral shields, risky if they flank us. Voss snorted from the helm. Risky? That's suicide if their commander smells the feint. The Krell don't play games, they end them. Enough, Orion cut in, though Voss's barb held truth. The Krell admiral, whoever led this pack, was no fool. They'd already lost 2 destroyers in the opening salvo, their crew's final transmissions echoing in Orion's mind, static-laced pleas for extraction that never came. The cost was mounting lives and metal alike, all to deny the Krell their shipyard and the armada it could spawn. He studied the hologram, tracing a finger along the nebula's fringe. An idea sparked, born of desperation and the human knack for turning traps into weapons. Voss, plot a course that grazes the nebula's edge, not into it but close enough to ionize our exhaust. It'll look like we're diving in, panic the Krell into overcommitting. Kane's brow furrowed. Sir, the interference could fry our own comms. We lose contact with the Intrepid, Captain Reyes won't know to follow. Orion met her eyes, seeing the caution warring with trust. That's the point. Reyes is sharp, she'll read the play. Signal her now, tight beam, all we can manage, follow the ghost. Then execute. The bridge fell into motion. Kane relayed the message, her voice a low murmur into the comms panel. Voss adjusted the course, the ship banking hard as the first tendrils of the nebula brushed their sensors. Alarms wailed anew, warning of overload, but Orion felt the shift, a subtle acceleration as the Vanguard skimmed the ionized haze. On the viewscreen, the Krell corvette broke formation, lunging forward in pursuit, its lances firing wild into the growing static. Interceptors peeled off, converging like hounds on a scent. Orion's pulse quickened. It was working. The nebula's glow bathed the bridge in ethereal purple, casting long shadows across the crew's determined faces. But then a new ping echoed from Kane's console. Admiral. Multiple signatures emerging from the field. Reinforcements. 3 cruisers closing fast. Orion's jaw tightened. The gamble had bought time, but the noose was reforming tighter than before. The Intrepid appeared on the edge of the display, her silhouette a battered shadow against the nebula's fire. Reyes was in position, but so were the Krell. One wrong move and the history they were forging would end in ash. Hold course, he said, settling back into his chair. And arm the disruptors. Let's give them a ghost story they'll never forget. Orion Venn gripped the armrest of his command chair, the leather creaking under his fingers as the bridge lights flickered. Lieutenant Kira Voss, his tactical officer, leaned over her console, her fingers dancing across the holographic displays. Sweat beaded on her forehead, but her voice cut through the din like a knife. Admiral, the Krell Vanguard is closing fast. Their disruptors have breached our outer shields, hull integrity at 60%. Venn nodded, his jaw set. He was no stranger to the Void's teeth, but this ambush in the nebula of Epsilon felt personal. The Krell, those insectoid marauders from the outer rim, had been picking off human convoys for months, their swarms overwhelming with sheer numbers. His fleet, 3 battered cruisers and a handful of support frigates, had been en route to reinforce the colony on Viridia when the trap sprung. Now, with the nebula's haze thickening around them, sensors flickering like dying stars, Venn felt the weight of command sharpened to a razor's edge. LA's ionized clouds scrambling sensors, escape was a gamble. Helm, evasive pattern Delta 7, Venn ordered, his voice steady. Ensign Raul Torres, the young pilot with a knack for threading needles, complied without hesitation. The USS Vanguard shuddered as thrusters fired, twisting away from a barrage of plasma lances that scorched the void where they'd been seconds before. Venn's mind raced through options. Direct confrontation would bleed them dry. The Krell's hive mind tactics turned every skirmish into a meat grinder. But running blind into the nebula risked collision with debris fields or worse, the Krell's hidden ambush points. Options, Kira? He asked, turning to her. She straightened, her cautious nature shining through in the way she weighed her words. We could vent plasma from the engineering base, create a false signature to draw them off. But it'd overload our core if we pushed too hard. Her eyes flicked to the engineering feed, where Chief Mechanic Lena Hart was already barking orders to her team below decks. Lena, the wiry veteran with a wit sharper than her tools, had patched more holes than Venn had stars on his uniform. If anyone could make the risky play work, it was her. Venn considered it. The nebulous gases would amplify the plasma bloom, maybe enough to mimic a dying ship and lure the Krell Vanguard into overextending. But the cost, potential core breach, meant lives on the line. He glanced at the main view screen, where the Krell swarm darted like angry hornets, their chitinous hulls glinting faintly through the haze. No time for half measures. Make it happen, Lena. He calmed down. Her response crackled back immediately, laced with that familiar sarcasm. "Aye, Admiral. Just don't blame me if we end up glowing in the dark." The ship groaned as engineering vented the superheated plasma. On the tactical overlay, a brilliant azure flare erupted astern, blooming into a deceptive specter of destruction. The Krell reacted predictably, their lead corvettes peeled off, diving toward the lure with weapons hot. Venn's heart pounded. It was working but barely. Two stragglers held formation, their sensors piercing the deception. "They're adapting," Kira warned, her voice tight. "Firing countermeasures." Torres swore under his breath, yanking the ship into a barrel roll that pressed everyone against their restraints. A disruptor beam grazed the port nacelle, sparks erupting from consoles. Venn smelled ozone, felt the deck tilt. "Damage report." "Shields down to 30, Kira replied. "But we've got a window, nebula eddies on starboard. If we surf them we can lose the tail." Venn leaned forward, eyes narrowing at the swirling currents displayed. The nebula's magnetic storms were a double-edged sword. Navigation hell but perfect for shaking pursuers. It demanded precision, the kind Torres thrived on. "Do it." And Kira, ready the torpedo spread. "Target their sensor nodes, we blind them." As the Vanguard plunged into the eddy, the ship bucked like a wild stallion. Alarms wailed, but Torres held her steady, his hands a blur. The Krell faltered, their formation fracturing in the interference. Venn watched the icons scatter, a grim satisfaction settling in. But victory here was Pyrrhic. Comms from Viridia reported ground assaults already underway. The Krell weren't just raiding, they were invading system by system. Lena's voice broke in over the intercom, breathless. "Core's holding, but we're venting atmosphere in sections 3 and 5. Casualties mounting, sir." The weight hit Venn like a gravity well. Names flashed in his mind, crew he'd shared meals with, stories with. This wasn't just a skirmish. It was the thin line between human foothold and extinction in the rim. He straightened, resolve hardening. "Patch what you can, Chief. We're not done yet." The eddy spat them out into clearer space, the Krell swarm a disorganized mess behind. Torque's torpedoes lanced out, striking true. Explosions lit the nebula's edge, crippling their pursuit. For now they had breathing room. But as Viridia loomed on the horizon, its orbital defenses flickering under siege, Venn knew the real burn was just beginning. His name, etched in fire across these stars, would come at a price none of them could afford to forget. Orion Venn gripped the armrest of his command chair, the faux leather creaking under his calloused fingers. The bridge of the UNS Vanguard hummed with the low thrum of failing life support systems, red emergency lights casting jagged shadows across the faces of his crew. Lieutenant Mara Kessler, his ever-cautious XO, leaned over the tactical console, her brow furrowed as she scanned the incoming data feeds. Beside her, Ensign Raj Patel, the ship's witty engineer, muttered curses in Hindi under his breath, his hands flying across the holographic repair interface. "Admiral, the plasma conduits in Sector 4 are holding for now," Mara reported, her voice steady despite the sweat beading on her forehead. "But if we don't reroute power from the auxiliary reactors soon, we'll lose main propulsion entirely. The Krell ambush has us dead in the water." Orion nodded, his jaw set like forged steel. He was no stranger to the Krell's hit-and-run tactics. Those biomechanical horrors from the outer rim, their ships grown from living tissue that adapted faster than any human alloy. 7 systems ago he'd outmaneuvered their Vanguard fleet by sacrificing a decoy cruiser, burning his name into the annals of human history with that desperate gambit. But now, pinned against the asteroid field of Epsilon Draconis, the stakes clawed higher. One wrong move and the Vanguard, and every soul aboard, would be mulch for the Krell's nutrient vats. "Raj, talk to me," Orion said, swiveling toward the engineer. "Can we jury-rig the shields to buy us time?" Raj glanced up, his dark eyes sharp with that trademark spark of ingenuity. "Sir, the shields are slagged from their last bioplasma volley. But I've got an idea, crazy but it might work. We vent the excess heat from the engines into the asteroid debris, create a thermal chaff cloud. It'll mask our signature long enough to flip the bird and run." Mara shot Raj a skeptical look. "Venting heat? That's like lighting a flare in the dark. The Krell sensors will pick it up in seconds." "Better than sitting here like a sitting duck," Raj countered, his fingers already initiating the sequence. Trust me, I've simulated worse in the mess hall with coffee stirrers. Orion waited, the weight of command pressing like the vacuum outside. His crew, fewer than 100 now after the losses in the Vegas skirmish, looked to him not for miracles but for the grit to seize the slim ones. He remembered the face of his first officer from that battle, vaporized in a hull breach. The cost of hesitation was etched in his scars. "Do it," he ordered. "Mara, plot an evasion course through the field. Tight and dirty." The ship shuddered as Raj executed the vent. Alarms blared, and the view screen filled with a blooming nebula of superheated gas and pulverized rock, the asteroid fragments glowing like embers in a forge. The Krell destroyer, its hull pulsing with vein-like bioluminescence, hesitated, its sensor tendrils whipping through the void as if tasting the confusion. "They're buying it," Mara whispered, her cautious nature yielding to a flicker of hope. The Vanguard's engines groaned back to life, thrusters firing in stuttering bursts to weave through the tumbling boulders. A near miss clipped the port nacelle, sparks erupting across the deck, but they pressed on. Then the Krell adapted. A lance of acidic plasma sliced through the chaff, grazing the hull. The impact rocked the bridge, consoles sparking, and Raj slammed into his station with a grunt. Direct hit on the secondary array. "We're venting atmosphere in engineering." Orion unstrapped, hauling Raj to his feet. "On your feet, ensign. Patch it manual style." Blood trickled from a gash on Raj's temple, but the engineer grinned through the pain, pure human defiance. Mara took the helm, her hands steady as she banked hard, dodging another volley. The asteroid field became a gauntlet, rocks the size of shuttles hurtling past, each one a potential grave. In the chaos, Orion spotted it. A massive, derelict mining rig half buried in the debris, its skeletal arms frozen in eternal grasp. Mara vectored us toward that wreck. "Raj, can we magnetize the hull to it? Use it as cover." Raj nodded, wiping blood from his eyes. "Aye, sir. It'll be bumpy, but it'll hide us like a tick in fur." The maneuver was brutal. The Vanguard slammed into the rig's magnetic field, metals screeching as they locked on. The Krell ship loomed closer, its maw opening to disgorge boarding pods, organic horrors that would infest and consume from within. But in the rig's shadow the humans worked feverishly. Raj sealed the breach with emergency foam, his witty banter silenced by focus. Mara recalibrated sensors, picking up faint Alliance distress signals from the next system over. As the Krell pods latched onto the derelict, Orion activated the rig's dormant charges, old mining explosives, triggered by a jury-rigged pulse from the ship's comms. The blast ripped through the void, shredding the pods and shearing off a chunk of the Krell's prow. The enemy vessel recoiled, trailing ichor that froze into crystalline shards. They broke free, engines roaring as they limped toward the jump point. The Vanguard was scarred, her systems limping, and Raj would need stitches. But they lived. Orion settled back into his chair, the bridge lights flickering to blue. "Good work, team. That's one more system we etch our name into." Yet as the stars streaked by in their escape, Orion couldn't shake the lingering burn. The Krell were evolving, their adaptations closing the gap. The war's cost mounted, and history demanded more than survival. It demanded victory no matter the scars left behind. Orion Venn gripped the armrest of his command chair, the bridge of the UNS Vanguard humming with the low thrum of overtaxed engines. Sweat beaded on his forehead, not from the heat of the recycled air, but from the weight of the fleet's dwindling options. 7 systems under siege, and now this. The Croft swarm had anticipated their flank, turning what should have been a surgical strike into a meat grinder. Alarms wailed as another corvette vanished from the tactical holo display, its icon flickering out like a snuffed candle. "Admiral," Captain Reyes said, her voice steady but edged with the strain of 12 straight hours at her station. She was the cautious one, always double-checking sensor sweeps, and right now her caution had saved them from a worse ambush. "The Croft are massing on Vector 37. If we pull back, we lose the relay station. But pushing forward, we've got maybe 20% shields left on the forward batteries." Orion nodded, his mind racing through the calculus of lives and hulls. Reyes had been with him since the early days, back when the United Nations Space Fleet was just a ragtag armada of converted freighters. Her loyalty was the kind that didn't need speeches. It showed in the way she anticipated his orders, rerouting power before he even spoke. Beside her, Lieutenant Karavos, the wit of the bridge, cracked her knuckles over the weapons console. Those bug-eyed bastards think they can box us in? I've got a surprise for 'em. Reroute auxiliary plasma vents to the disruptors. It'll burn hot, but it'll burn through their hulls first. The plan had been simple. Sever the Crothis supply line through the Epsilon relay, a nexus of wormhole gates that funneled their endless drones across human space. Ingenuity had gotten them this far. Human engineers jury-rigging alien tech with duct tape and sheer spite, but the swarm adapted faster than expected. Their initial feint had drawn the enemy out, but now the vanguard was caught in the crossfire, allied ships scattering like leaves in a storm. "Make it happen, Voss," Orion ordered, his tone clipped. He leaned forward, eyes locked on the holodisplay where red icons swarmed like angry hornets. The Croth weren't conquerors in the traditional sense. They were a hive mind devouring worlds to fuel their expansion. No evil empire, just insatiable hunger. And Orion's fleet was the thin line between that hunger and humanity's core worlds. A shudder ran through the deck as Croth fighter pods latched onto the hull, their acid-tipped drills chewing through armor. Boarders on decks 4 and 6. Engineering piped up over the comms. Orion's jaw tightened. He couldn't afford to lose focus now. Reyes spun in her chair. "We need to vent the corridors, sir. Flush 'em out." Voss snorted, fingers flying across her panel. "Or I could overload the bulkheads, turn those bugs into paste." "Your call, Admiral." Orion hesitated, the weight of the choice pressing down. Venting meant risking his own crew, brave souls who'd followed him into hell and back. Overloading could destabilize the ship. But hesitation was death in this game. Voss, overload on my mark. Reyes, coordinate with the flanking destroyers. Tell them to cover our starboard while we punch through. The bridge crew moved like a well-oiled machine, a testament to the camaraderie forged in fire. No grand speeches, just quiet efficiency born of trust. Voss's plan backfired almost immediately. The plasma reroute caused a feedback surge, frying half the disruptor banks and sending sparks dancing across her console. She cursed under her breath, slamming a fist down. "Damn it! Containment breach in the vents." Klaxons blared louder, the ship groaning as Croth forces exploited the weakness, pouring more pods into the fray. Orion felt the deck tilt, gravity compensators straining. A direct hit rocked the vanguard, shearing off a sensor array in a blaze of debris. The holodisplay glitched, icons blurring for precious seconds. "Shields at 5%, Reyes reported, her face pale but resolute. "Admiral, we have to abort." "No," Orion said, rising from his chair. His voice carried the grit that had rallied fleets before. Not bravado, but the unyielding resolve of a man who'd stared down worse. "We take the relay or we die trying. Voss, manual override on the main guns. Fire everything we've got." She nodded, wiping sweat from her brow, and patched in the auxiliary batteries. The vanguard surged forward, engines screaming as it rammed through the swarm. Laser fire lanced out, carving glowing scars across Croth hulls. One destroyer, the UNS Resolve, exploded in a silent fireball, its sacrifice buying them a narrow corridor. Orion's mind flashed to the cost. Families waiting on distant colonies, the names of the fallen etching deeper into his memory. But retreat meant the Croth would overrun the next system and the one after. Humanity's ingenuity wasn't in weapons. It was in refusing to break. As the relay station loomed, a spindly lattice of alien gates pulsing with captured stars, the Croth closed in tighter. A massive dreadnought drifted into view, its maw opening like a predator's jaw. Voss's fingers trembled on the firing sequence. Incoming torpedoes spread, evasive. The ship twisted, but not fast enough. Impacts hammered the hull, breaching the outer compartments. Alarms screamed of hull integrity failing. Reyes grabbed Orion's arm. "Sir, if we don't, we adapt," he cut in, eyes narrowing. "Reyes, signal the fleet. All ships, ram formation. We're burning our way through." The order rippled out, a desperate gambit. Human ships, battered but unbowed, formed a wedge, engines flaring blue. The vanguard led, Orion standing tall as the bridge lights flickered. Collision alerts wailed, Orion gripped the armrests of his command chair. The hum of the bridge's consoles a low thrum against the tension coiling in his gut. The view screen flickered with data streams from the forward sensors, painting the void in stark reds and blues, enemy signatures swarming like angry hornets toward the battered hull of the Indomitable. 7 systems down, and now this. The Krell armada had flanked them at Epsilon Verge, their bioships pulsing with that eerie green ichor that corroded anything it touched. His fleet was down to 3 vessels, the rest scattered or slagged in the pyres of earlier battles. "Admiral," Lieutenant Reyes said, her voice steady but edged with fatigue, fingers dancing over her tactical board. She was the cautious one, always double-checking trajectories before a shot, her dark eyes scanning for the flaw in every plan. "Their lead carriers venting plasma. If we push the ventral thrusters now, we could slip through the debris field and hit their flank blindside." Orion nodded, but his mind raced ahead. Reyes was right, clever as always, but the Indomitable's engines were wheezing, patched together from scavenged parts after the rout at Theta Prime. One wrong burst and they'd be drifting fuel for the Krell's harvest. He glanced at Commander Hale, the wiry engineer hunched over a flickering holopad, his wit usually a bomb in these storms but silenced now by the grease-streaked furrow in his brow. "Status on the jury rig?" Orion asked, keeping his tone even, the weight of command pressing like an ill-fitted harness. Hale looked up, wiping sweat from his forehead with a sleeve that had seen better days. "Holding, sir. But if we divert power to shields for that maneuver, the warp coils might fry. We've got ingenuity on our side, human grit, remember? But these coils are cobbled from Orion's scrap. One surge and we're done." The bridge lights dimmed briefly as another Krell probe skimmed their shields, the ship shuddering like a beast in pain. Orion felt the vibration through his boots, a reminder of the cost already paid. Crews lost, worlds scarred. The Krell didn't conquer. They consumed, stripping biospheres to fuel their endless expansion. And here at the edge of human space, the line held only because of stubborn choices like this one. "Risk it," Orion decided, his voice cutting through the murmur of alerts. "Reyes, plot the slip. Hale, bleed auxiliary power to the coils. Keep her together." He stood, the creak of his uniform a small sound in the chaos, and leaned toward the comms. "All hands, this is the Admiral. We're threading the needle. Hold fast." Reyes executed the burn, the Indomitable lurching forward in a plume of ionized gas. The debris field loomed, a graveyard of shattered freighters and Alliance hulks from the initial skirmish, tumbling in silent orbits. Krell fire lanced past, missing by margins that felt like breaths held too long. Orion watched as their ship wove through the wreckage, a jagged asteroid shearing close enough to spark against the hull. But the plan backfired almost immediately. A Krell interceptor, smaller and nimbler than the carrier, anticipated the dodge. It barreled from the shadow of a derelict cruiser, its tendrils whipping out to latch onto the Indomitable's underbelly. Alarms blared, hull breach imminent. "They're boarding," Reyes shouted, her caution fracturing into urgency as she fired point defense guns. The shots tore into the interceptor, but not before it disgorged a wave of chitin-armored drones into the lower decks. Hale was already moving, grabbing a toolkit from the wall. "I'll seal it off, sir. Take engineering teams." "No," Orion cut in, his hand on the engineer's shoulder, firm but not unkind. Hale's eyes widened. He was the Joker, quick with a quip to lighten the load, but now his face hardened with resolve. "You stay here, keep the engines alive. Reyes, you're with me. We handle this personally." They moved fast, Orion leading the way to the access tubes, his sidearm holstered at his hip, a relic from Earthside training reliable in a pinch. The ship groaned around them, corridors lit by emergency reds that cast long shadows. Drones skittered ahead, their legs clicking like bones on metal, bioacid dripping from mandibles that could melt bulkheads. Reyes took point at a junction, her rifle barking twice. Short, controlled bursts that dropped 2 of the things in sprays of viscous fluid. "They're adapting," she muttered, reloading with practiced ease. "Last system they ignored small arms. Now they're vulnerable. Must be the cold vacuum messing with their exos." Orion fired over her shoulder, nailing a drone mid-leap. His body crumpled, smoking. "Human edge," he said, a grim smile tugging at his lips. "We improvise." But the words tasted hollow. The breach was widening, and beyond it the Krell's hunger waited. They pushed into the cargo bay where the hull yawned open to the stars. Drones swarmed from the gash, more pouring in with each passing second. Orion's boots slipped on Iker-slick decking, but Reyes hauled him up, her grip iron. Together they fell back to a defensible crate stack, laying down fire that bought moments, not victory. "Hale, report." Orion barked into his comm, ducking an acid spray that sizzled the air. "Coils are redlining, Admiral," came the crackling reply, Hale's voice strained over the whine of straining machinery. "But I've got a workaround, rerouting through the auxiliary reactors. It'll cost us warp capability for the next jump, maybe permanently." "Do it," Orion ordered, popping off another shot. A drone exploded in a satisfying burst, but 3 more took. Orion gripped the armrests of his command chair, the metal biting into his palms as the bridge shuddered under another barrage. Alarms wailed, red lights strobing across the faces of his crew, faces etched with exhaustion but unyielding. Lieutenant Alara Voss, his tactical officer, leaned over her console, her fingers a blur. "Shields at 20%, Admiral. That Krall cruiser is lining up for a killing shot." He nodded, jaw set. The plan had been simple. Lure the enemy into the nebula's heart, where sensors went blind and the gas clouds played havoc with their targeting. But the Krall had adapted faster than expected, their adaptive hulls shrugging off the interference like rain on plasteel. Now the Vanguard was cornered, engines straining against the pull of a collapsing star fragment at the nebula's core. "Helm, evasive pattern Delta 7, Orion barked. Ensign Tarek Hale, the young pilot with a wit as sharp as his reflexes, twisted the controls. The ship lurched, a dancer slipping through flames. But the Krall vessel, a hulking behemoth twice their size, matched them turn for turn, its plasma lances carving glowing scars across the void. Alara's voice cut through the din, steady despite the sweat beading on her brow. "Admiral, we've got a window, 30 seconds before they recharge. If we vent the auxiliary plasma from the forward bays, it might blind their sensors long enough to flip the script." Ryan's mind raced. Venting plasma would overload their own forward arrays, leaving them weaponless up close. Risky. But retreat wasn't an option. The Krall fleet had pinned the human colonies in 7 systems, their blockades starving out billions. This nebulous skirmish was the crack in their armor, and he wouldn't let it seal. "Do it," he said. "Tarek, plot a ramming vector on their bridge module. Alara, coordinate the vent with engineering." The crew moved like a single organism, honed by months of relentless pursuit. Below decks, Chief Mechanic Lena Korsakov, stubborn, brilliant, the one who patched the Vanguard together with spit and spite, acknowledged the order over comms. "Venting now, sir. Hold on to your stars." A low rumble built in the ship's bones as the plasma ejected in a brilliant azure plume, blooming like a flower of fire against the nebula's swirling purples. The Krall's sensors faltered. Their barrage went wide, scorching empty space. The Vanguard surged forward, engines screaming. Tarek hooped, a rare crack in his cool facade. "They're scrambling. Impact in 10. Orion watched the view screen, the enemy ship swelling like a predator's maw. At this range, ramming would cripple them both. But the Krall's design prioritized firepower over integrity. Humans built for survival. "Brace!" Alara shouted as the ships collided. Metal screamed, sparks erupted across the bridge. The Vanguard bucked, tearing a gash through the Krall's hull, but the impact hurled Orion from his chair. He hit the deck hard, tasting blood, the world tilting. When he pushed himself up, the bridge was a haze of smoke and flickering lights. Tarek slumped over the helm, blood trickling from a gash on his forehead, but his hands still clutched the controls. Alara was already at damage control, barking orders to contain a hull breach. "Status," Orion rasped, hauling himself back to the chair. "We punched through," Alara reported, her voice tight. "Their bridge is slagged. But we've lost main power, life supports failing in sections 3 and 5. And that star fragment, it's pulling us in." Orion glanced at the tactical display. The nebulous core loomed, a vortex of gravitational fury where the dying star's remnants churned. Escape velocity was slipping away. Without engines at full, they'd be spaghettified in minutes. Lena's voice crackled over the intercom, laced with her thick outer rim accent. "Admiral, engines are toast. But I've got an idea. Reroute the warp core's auxiliary coolant through the maneuvering thrusters. It'll give us a burst, but it'll fry the core. No more jumps after this. A one-way ticket." Orion met Alara's eyes. She nodded, fierce determination in her gaze. Tarek stirred, flashing a weak grin. "Better than going out with a whimper, sir." "Make it happen, Chief," Orion said. He turned to the crew. "We're breaking free today for every colony they've threatened. Give me everything you've got." The ship groaned as Lena worked her magic. Alarms blared warnings of core instability, but the Vanguard shuddered to life. Thrusters fired in a desperate roar, pushing against the inexorable pull. The view screen showed the Krell wreckage tumbling into the vortex, a pyre for their hubris. They cleared the edge by seconds, the nebula receding like a bruised dream. But as power flickered and died, Orion knew the cost. The Vanguard drifted, wounded but alive, her warp drive a smoking ruin. Rescue would come, eventually, but the war raged on and 7 systems still hung in the balance. In the quiet that followed, Orion stood, surveying his bridge family. Scratches and bruises but unbroken. "Good work," he murmured. "Now let's figure out how to burn this victory into their hides." The bridge of the Vanguard hummed with the low thrum of failing systems, emergency lights casting long shadows across the consoles. Admiral Orion Venn gripped the armrests of his command chair, his knuckles white against the worn leather. Sweat beaded on his forehead, not from fear but from the heat venting from overloaded circuits. The view screen flickered, showing the Armada's remnants, 3 battered cruisers holding formation against the void, while the enemy fleet closed in like a swarm of metallic locusts. "Status, Lieutenant Reyes?" Orion's voice cut through the din, steady as the stars they'd chased across 7 systems. Reyes, her fingers dancing over a sparking panel, didn't look up. "Shields at 12%, Admiral. Main guns offline, rerouting power to the forward array, but it'll take another minute. That plasma storm's frying everything." Orion nodded, his mind racing through the calculus of survival. They'd pushed too far, ignited the beacons on Epsilon Prime to etch his name, *Venn*, in ionized script across the sector's skies, a defiant flare against the Coalition's blockade. It was meant to rally the fringe worlds, show them humanity's grit wasn't just words. But the backlash had come swift. Interceptors, then dreadnoughts, and now this trap in the nebula's heart. "Captain Hale," Orion said, turning to the wiry engineer at his side, "your jury rig on the warp core, will it hold?" Hale wiped grease from his brow, his eyes sharp with that cautious optimism that had kept them alive this long. "Barely, sir. We can punch a micro-jump, but it'll scorch the relays. One-way ticket unless we vent the auxiliary tanks." The deck shuddered as an enemy salvo grazed the hull, alarms wailing. Orion felt the vibration in his bones, a reminder of the cost already paid. The Aurora lost with all hands, the outposts on Vega 4 silenced. No heroes here, just people betting everything on one clever turn. "Risk it," Orion decided, his tone brooking no argument. "Target their command ship. Make them feel the burn." Reyes punched the sequence, her breath hitching as the ship groaned into motion. The Vanguard lurched forward, engines screaming against the strain. On the view screen, the nebulous tendrils swirled, purple and gold, framing the Coalition flagship like a crown of thorns. Hale leaned in, voice low. "Admiral, if this fails, it won't." Orion met his gaze, the weight of command settling like an old friend. "We've carved our mark. Now we make it stick." The microjump ignited, space folding in a blaze of blue fire. Alarms peaked, then silenced as they emerged inside the enemy's formation, close enough to see the rivets on their hull. The forward array roared to life, lancing plasma that tore through the flagship's bridge in a bloom of white-hot fury. Chaos erupted across the comms, alien shouts in fractured English, their lines fracturing. The Vanguard spun away, trailing sparks as the remaining cruisers followed suit, firing opportunistic salvos. But victory came with teeth. The warp core whined, redlining, and Hale's hands flew to the controls. "Venting now, brace." A jolt rocked the ship, the world tilting as atmosphere howled into the void. Orion tasted blood from a split lip, but the view screen cleared, the enemy fleet scattering, their command severed. The nebula's glow framed the debris, and in the distance Epsilon's beacons pulsed, *Venn*, a scar on the stars visible from 7 systems. Reyes slumped back, a weary smile cracking her face. "We did it, sir. They're pulling back." Orion exhaled, the tension uncoiling.